Hi everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Sapna Singh, and today I'll be talking about cyber threat intelligence and why businesses should come together in sharing cyber threat intel. About me, I have more than 12 years of experience. Currently, I'm working as a principal cybersecurity architect. I'm also a global speaker and have been speaking at various conferences. I also work with a couple of communities in India and Middle East to support, empower, and guide women in cybersecurity domain. So let's get started. To set up the stage and why I'm talking about cyber threat intel, I'll cover some of the current threat trends. So there is almost one hacking attempt in every 39 seconds. It takes more than 200 days for an organization to discover a breach, and that costs billions of dollars to the business. Even during the pandemic of COVID-19, we have seen huge spike in cyber attacks that is almost 300%. By end of 2021, the global cybersecurity spending would be 6 trillion USD. Organizations are nowadays no longer limited to on-premise environment. They are migrating to cloud due to digitalization and using a lot of advanced technologies such as IoTs, 5Gs, etc. So in this scenario where cyber attacks are more advanced and sophisticated, we are also observing rapid increase in number of attacks. Our cybersecurity teams, SOC teams, are overwhelmed with volume of alerts and incidents every day. It's hard for them to prioritize the mitigation effort. Sometimes they end up choosing false positive or low severity alerts rather than focusing on the critical incidents. Cybersecurity leaders are also challenged because they have to do more in less budget. They have limited resources, but to cope up with the ever evolving cyber threat landscape, they have to stay ahead of attackers. They need to have broader understanding of different threat groups, uh, different threat campaigns, more knowledge about nation state attack vectors. So that is the reason it's vital that organizations have a mature cyber threat intel framework and program established so that cybersecurity teams and SOC teams, SOC analysts can be presented with the actionable intelligence. They have better context so that they can focus their prioritization efforts towards the critical incidents and they are able to protect the organizational digital asset. And likewise, cybersecurity leaders can also make the threat informed decisions. They can formulate the right strategy and allocate the right budget and resources to address the challenges. So throughout this presentation, I'll cover three main basic points. Is cyber threat intelligence just feats? Are the feats enough? How cyber threat intel help different levels in the organization? What is the benefit of cyber threat intel sharing? How it can be shared? So in layman term, cyber threat intelligence is the process of understanding the threats to an organization based on available data points. But it's not only about understanding the data points, rather than there should be an understanding how the data relates to the organization. So CTI teams must combine the data points with the contextual information to determine the relevant threats to the organization or business. CTI also involves the analyzing the information about the threats and the producing the guidance to determine what steps must be taken care to handle the cyber threats. So talking about benefits of threat intelligence, our cybersecurity teams are already doing a lot of activities such as threat hunting, red teaming, incident response, penetration testing, vulnerability management. But now is the time to be more proactive, not only understand the technical details of the cyber attacks rather than understanding of the TTPs associated with the attackers themselves, what their motives are, so that we can gain better context and visibility into the cyber threat campaigns, cyber threat activities. And by such kind of understanding, we can strengthen the organizational security portion. We can improve the detection and response time. And by doing all that, we can have the holistic view on different threats that can damage the organizational assets, reputation, or can target the users. So there are different terms in cyber security, and it's important for us to understand these terms when we relate them to the cyber threat intel, such as data, information, and intelligence. So data refers to simple facts that tend to be available in large volumes, such as IP addresses, list of URLs, list of domains. But when we collate the data for the useful outcome, then it becomes the information. For example, a collated series of logs showing a spike in the suspicious activity. After processing and analysis of the information, uh, we can convert the information into intelligence. For example, the collated log data is contextualized with the prior incidents, breaches, or ongoing incidents and breaches regarding similar activity, which also allows for the development of a strategy to mitigate the incident. So now let's go over how the data is converted into intelligence in the organization. So we'll cover the threat intel life cycle. So first phase is planning and evaluation, where first foremost important step would be to identify the organizational requirement. It's should not be the case that the organization just subscribe to some data feeds or utilize the data feeds. Rather than it's important to understand what is the need, what is the value that the threat intel will add and provide to the cybersecurity teams. What are the critical assets that organization have and how the threat would impact them. So once we have the requirement gathered, the next step would be to collect the data and information from various sources and then process it, analyze it, and convert it into the threat intel. And the last step is to share the threat intel with the various levels in the organization. And one important thing to note here is that uh, the uh, the threat intel that is being shared should be in the language that audience can understand, because if they could not understand the threat intel or the report language, in that case there is no use of threat intel. It wouldn't be able to add any value to them. So let's go over and understand the type of threat intel that can be shared with different levels in the organization and how it can benefit them. So strategic intelligence is basically produced for board level people, for C-suite, for cyber leaders to understand the overall threat landscape for the business. And by utilizing such reports or threat intel, the cyber leaders can formulate the best strategy for the organization by focusing on the cyber threats that can be harmful for the organization. Operational intelligence is to find the insights from ongoing and incoming attacks. For example, if there is a chatter around the threat activity or threat campaign for certain sectors, certain businesses, or the organization, if such report is available, then organization can take best steps to prevent the attacks. In another scenario, if the organization is already breached, and data is leaked, being sold out in the dark forums, or the list of the passwords are pasted in the paste bin and utilized by different threat groups. In that case, also organization can do a lot of preventive measures to minimize the impact. Tactical intelligence comes in the human readable format or machine readable format, such as IOCs. Now, such information can be directly fed to the SIM, to various network devices to build and strengthen the defensive measures. So there are various cyber threat intel sources, and some of them are listed here, such as open source intelligence. So data can be collected from CTI companies, from internet, such as from vulnerability exploit feeds, social media, darknet, public statements, threat feeds. Internal intelligence is collected from the organizational and internal assets, such as from IDS, IPSs, firewalls, proxies, network logs, SIM, and other security or network devices. Human intelligence, when the CTI analysts have direct connection with the hackers, and such information is very precise because they have most accurate information which can help the organization to prevent the breaches. Then when we talk about counter intelligence is to deceive the hackers by providing the false information, such as honeypots, which is used to set up to deceive the attackers. Finished intelligence is where we get the commercial data feeds, which are more refined, analyzed in the context of the organization. So now let's summarize what we have understood so far. So organization receive threat feeds, threat data from various intelligence sources or from commercial threat data providers or CTI providers, and then such data or information can be onboarded to threat intelligence platform, which can also have the capability to use machine learning and AI to further process and analyze and put the context around the data and the information collected from various sources. Now, this can be also correlated with the internal organizational network and security devices, such as SIM from various network devices, such as firewalls, IDS, IPS. And on top of that, CTI analysts can also use the human intelligence. And after all this processing, the final outcome would be threat intel, which has a better insight, which has a better context, which is relevant to the organization. And then the threat intel can be disseminated to various levels in the organization in the form of strategic, operational, and tactical reports. So far we have covered the basics of cyber threat intel, how the threat intel is generated, which is relevant to the organization, and how it can be shared with different levels in the organization, and how it can benefit. Now I'll talk about the importance of cyber threat intel sharing. So organizations are nowadays using threat intel in one or other form. Some organizations have very mature cyber threat intel program. Some of them are using threat feeds from various sources. Some of them have various tools to produce IOCs. But in today's scenario, where cyber attackers or cyber criminals are more sophisticated, advanced, they have all kind of technical resources, they are highly motivated, persistent, agile. They range from script kiddies to various hacktivist group to various threat groups to nation state actors. Their motives are to disrupt the services or steal the confidential data, proprietary data, or maintain the access in the organization for longer time. And in this scenario, it's not possible for a single organization to defend themselves. and have a deeper understanding of all different threat groups and threat activities or threat campaign that could impact the organization. And that is the reason it's crucial to understand that threat intel sharing can help them. So they need to uh, come together with their collective and combined efforts. Threat intel sharing can be useful to get better context in return. Um, the organizations can have rapid access to most relevant threats. They can expand their visibility and insights to critical threats. They can prevent and defend attacks in real time. So, for example, if an organization is facing a phishing incident, uh, it's not only about the blocking IOCs, right? Blocking IP addresses, URLs, or certain set of domains, but rather than understanding the motive of the attackers, whether they are only behind this organization or they are targeting the industry or they are targeting the businesses globally. And to understand that, it's also important to understand what techniques or methods they are using, what penetration methods they are using, what IOCs are they using, what 0 days they are using, or what kind of malwares they are using to maintain their access or to breach the organization. One of the way would be to upload the IOCs in online scanning engine such as virus total to see if the same signatures have been observed anywhere. But in most of the cases, when the attackers are using 0 days or advanced malware, there would not be any clue even online. And in this scenario, if the organization just closes the incident, uh, this would not be an appropriate action or the preventive measure that is very much effective. So if this organization shares the information with other organization and other peers in the community, the other organizations can also check, validate, and provide better context to this ongoing threat campaign. If they are also observing the same threat campaign in their organization, they can put all their preventive measures and stop that attack from the propagation, because nowadays the attack can start from one organization and can rapidly propagate globally. So, and even if they are not seeing such attacks, still they can prevent that from happening, because now they have a knowledge about this threat activities. So as I said, threat intel sharing helps building the defensive measures effectively in real time without much delay. Uh, and also each and every organization has uh, different set of tools, techniques, expertise, and skill sets. And if organizations in the community come together and use collective knowledge, collective experiences, collective skill sets, then in that case they can have 360 view or wider view or diversified view on any threat activity. That would be really helpful for them. And at the end, the organizations can come together for the collaboration of safer internet. So now we understood the benefits of the cyber threat intel sharing, but there are certain challenges as well, such as each and every organization subscribes to various threat feeds, and they receive the threat data or threat feeds from various channels. And once they start sharing such data feeds or information or intel with other organizations in the community, who take care of the data quality? Because it's in volumes. So there should be some mechanism to ensure that the threat data quality is appropriate and relevant. Then there are legal and privacy concerns. So which law will be applicable while sharing the threat intel within the community? There are privacy concerns as well, such as what if an organization end up sharing some PII data or some confidential data with other organizations. Then there are concerns about the potential misuse. What if an organization A shares some threat intel with the other organization in the community, and other organization end up sharing such information with the vendors or disclose that in public, which they are not supposed to do. In that case, such information can be misused, can be utilized by cyber criminals to craft the advanced attack against the organization uh, who has shared the information. Then there are interoperability issue. So each and every organization has their own format to consume the threat intel, and if they don't use the same format, whatever they receive would be unusable or not applicable in the real time if the format differs. Then some organizations in the community just consume the data, they don't contribute. There could be several reasons, because of lack of expertise, because they think that they do not have the skill set to produce the threat intel. So the basic question that we should ask while joining a community, or once the organization has joined the community, such as what to share, how to share, and whom to share. So if an organization decides to participate in threat intel sharing, the cybersecurity leaders should focus on four main building blocks, such as the model and modes of exchange, rule of engagement and protocols, types of information exchange, and mechanism of exchange. So if these four building blocks are addressed, then a lot of challenges would be resolved. So there are several models proposed globally for threat intel sharing, such as industry to industry initiatives. There are ICs and ISOs, which are industry specific, which organization can join to utilize and get the benefit of the threat intel sharing. Then government-led initiatives, there are various where government also encourages for the public-private partnership. So there are various kind of groups such as targeted, which are very specific to particular sector. For example, oil and gas sector or energy sector. Then there are confidential groups where the threat intel can only be shared within that particular community. Then public, where the information can be disclosed publicly. So while forming a community or while joining a community, organizations should also consider and also should have or focus that there should be a rule of engagement, such as community membership policy, how to identify or authenticate a new member. Then sharing information policy, what would be the minimum quality of sharing threat intel, conditions when sharing is permitted, anonymization and sanitization of exchange TI, and several other rules. Then there should be some rules about the information ownership policy, such as instruction for handling received data of living participants, intellectual property rights, agreed retention procedure for exchange data. So as I earlier talked about different kinds of threat intel reports, the community should also decide how and what they will share, what kind of reports they are going to share, whether it's a strategic report, operational advisories, indicator of compromise, or low-level data such as network flow records and full packet capture. Threat intelligence exchange types and formats. So initially, when the community is formed, the information or threat intel can be exchanged through emails, phone calls, through face-to-face meetings and teleconferencing. But in the longer term, there should be an automated mechanism and formats should be used. The format which is widely used and widely acceptable at the global level is sticks and taxi. So taxi is the career and sticks is the schema that transfers the threat intel. So even if you are subscribing to any CTI vendor, it's important to ask whether they support automated exchange formats such as sticks and taxi or not, so that once you have that support available, you can directly feed such information to your SIM or to various network devices rather than doing it manually. So these are some sources for this presentation. And that's it from my side for today. Thanks a lot for listening in. Thanks a lot for your time today.